Hello, my name is Chloe. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm bringing to you an unhaul. So I have about 30 books here to show you. I think it's 29 exactly. And these are all of the books that have left my collection in about the last 2 months. During that time, I have read a fair amount of books, and any books that I rate 3.5 and lower, sometimes 4, I unhaul because I'm not going to read them again. And I also had a little bit of a deep clean of my shelves and got rid of some long-standing TBR books that I knew were never going to get read. Filming these videos always makes me want to do this again and look through my shelves, but I'm trying to hold fire and not unhaul any more books. But here we go. Let me tell you the 29 books I have unhauled in the past 2 months or so. If I hold the book up physically, there is a high likelihood that that book is going on my Vinted. So if you're in the UK, make sure you follow my Vinted. It's down in the description, and the vast majority of these books will be uploaded. They won't be if I'm showing a picture on the screen, because that means they've already left my physical collection, or if they are reserved for somebody in particular. So the first book I unhauled actually went back to my colleague at work, and that is Dream Lake by Lisa Kleypas. My colleague Liv bought me this book for my birthday, and she wanted me to read it and see if I liked it. It's one of her all-time favourite books, if not her favourite, so I read it, and she never had a physical copy. She was reading it on her Kindle, so I read the book, didn't love it, gave it back to her as part of her leaving present so that she could have a physical copy of this book. I then also unhauled The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I read this back in April, maybe? April, start of May? April. I wasn't a massive fan. I'm really glad that I got to read it. I know a lot of people love this book with their whole heart, so I really want to give it a good go. I did read the whole thing. I buddy read it with Victoria, but it just wasn't one I was going to look at again, so I unhauled it. Then we have the first book I can hold up physically. We have Ace of Spades. I did not love this book. I flew through it. It was a very, very, very easy read, but the story just didn't really captivate me that much. I didn't enjoy it. So yeah, this one is not going to get read again. So this is a good example. This will definitely be up on Vinted for you. The next book I read, liked, but I'm never going to read again is Open Road Summer by Emery Lord. I was considering looking out for the American cover of this book. It's just a little bit prettier. This one's a little beat up and destroyed, but I did enjoy the story. We're following a country singer and her best friend as they go on a little tour across America, and the support act and her best friend start having a little fling. So it was good. Not going to read it again. Don't need this ugly book on my shelves. Then a book I didn't really like. We have Influencer Island by Kyle Rutkin. I liked the premise of this book. It was kind of like The Hunger Games with social media influencers, but I felt like all of the action was done kind of badly, and it wasn't one that I would want to read again. I didn't like it overall. I feel like it needed a little bit more work. Enough said. We then have The Beast by Katie Robert. This is part of the Wicked Villains series, and I didn't really like this one. There are some of the Wicked Villains books that I really vibe with, and The Beast was not one of them. We're following the Beast, Gaten rather than Gaston, and I think she was just called Belle. Was she? Or just Isabel, sorry. It didn't really do it for me, so I'm not going to read it again. Then part of my unhaul of books I just knew I wasn't going to get to. We have Barefoot on the Beach by Caitlin Duncan. This was a book in a box of stories. They sent me a box to show you what was in like their summer reads box, and I'd been holding on to this. There are things about this that sound great. We're talking small town romance. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not me. And another one that isn't me is A Wildflower Summer by Carolyn Flynn. Again, small town romance, mechanic. We're actually near Chicago, so this would tick off so many boxes. It's not drawing me in. I've had it a long time, haven't even thought about picking it up. One I'm not going to read again is Mindhunter by John Douglas and Mark Olshaker. So I actually listened to the audiobook of this one, and if I was going to reread it, I would go for the audiobook. I wouldn't physically pick this up. I'm glad I gave it a go. It's a good book. It's like a true crime classic. I'm glad we read it. We read it for the book club. I just don't need the physical copy. I really don't. I'm trying to be brutal. Then we have This Is How You Fall in Love by Anika Hussein, which is a book I got sent from Hotkey Books. And I did sign up to be on their paid campaign for it. I didn't get into the paid campaign, but they sent me the book anyway. And I was just being brutally honest and thought, would I have read this if not told to read it for a paid campaign? Probably not. So I did hold it up in my haul. I've talked about it a little bit, but it's not going to happen. I'd rather someone else enjoy this. We then have Show Us Who You Are by Al McNichol. I got this one because I loved A Kind of Spark. Nothing's making me want to get to this, unfortunately. It's kind of a superhero take, and I think the The part I loved about A Kind of Spark is how real it felt, and this feels very unreal to me. Does that make sense? I don't know. Not my jam right now. I then have 2 books in a series that I've considered unhauling for a while. We have P.S. I Still Love You and Always and Forever Lara Jean by Jenny Han. These are books 2 and 3 in the To All the Boys I've Loved Before series, and I'm keeping book 1 because I loved the movie, I like the book, I just want to keep those memories of that being alive. But even with the movies, I would happily just watch the first one and just read the first book. I don't need to keep these forever. Next up, I have The Serial Killer's Wife by Alice Hunter. This was a very meh thriller where we're following a woman whose husband is accused of being a serial killer. You'd think that sounds exciting, but I didn't find it that exciting. Would not recommend this, and I'm not going to carry on with the series, so don't need to keep this. Then one I actually can't show you is Triflers Need Not Apply by Camilla Bruce. I actually passed this one on to Abby because I really do think she would enjoy it more than I would. She showed some interest and I was like, yes, please read this. This is a historical fiction based on the crimes of Belle Gunness, who is a prolific serial killer from back in the day who would entrap men to get their life insurance policies. And her story is fascinating, but I just didn't find this book that captivating, so I'm not going to read it again. But it wasn't a bad book. What was a bad book was The Lock-In by Phoebe Luckhurst, one of my least favourite books of all time. I've had a rant in the vlog where I read this. I do not need to keep this book. It needs to go. Less of a, you know, brutal feeling on this one is When Dimple Met Rishi by Sandhya Menon. I think I gave this like 3.5 stars. It's just a YA contemporary. I don't need to read it again. It didn't move the earth for me. I see why people loved it back in the day, but I don't need to keep this book. We then have The Magnolia Palace by Fiona Davis. This is another historical fiction. I'm not really sure what I was doing with these. And this is a really lovely Book of the Month edition. Like, oh, it's gorgeous. If you can call historical cozy mystery a thing, this is that. We're following Lillian, who becomes an artist muse, and she is the kind of inspiration for a lot of sculptures back in the 1990, after 1919. And nearly 15 years later, English model Veronica has her own chance to make her career. Historical mystery-ish. Not going to read it again. Then we have Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. I just didn't love this one. I don't have strong feelings either way. It's not going to be one I reach for again. It's a mafia romance between 2 rival families. Really not bad, just not going to read it again. I didn't love On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. I really struggled with this one. I don't really understand why I should have cared about this book. No, I didn't like it, not my thing. Happy to pass this out into the world for someone who will surely love it. One I DNF'd is Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. I tried to read this one. I was about 100 pages in and I just didn't care. This is a YA contemporary. We're following a girl called Quinn? Yes, Quinn, who writes lists in a journal. The journal goes missing. Someone finds it and is blackmailing her to reveal her secrets to get the journal back. Didn't really care. One I did like, but I'm not going to read again, is The Bus on Thursday by Shirley Barrett. This was a very weird horror, told in a very strange format, very choppy. Really did like it though. Like, that's an example of a whole chapter. But yeah, did like it, just not going to pick this one up again. I am speeding through these books. This is not like me. We then have True Crime by Samantha Kolsnick. This is a very weird horror novella following a girl, Susie, and her brother Lim, who are abused by their mother, and then they go on a killing spree. Not going to read it again. It wasn't awful, but was it good? I'm not sure. I think I gave it like 3 stars. I'm being too harsh. We then have Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Not a favourite Riley Sager, I will say. I didn't hate it. I feel like this is the same review. I didn't hate it. I did predict where it was going. It didn't wow me in any way. But yeah, just not one I'm gonna need to read again. Ever. 2 books I gave to a colleague at work for her daughter are One of Us Is Next and One of Us Is Lying and One of Us Is Next. I'm not going to reach for book number 3. I think it's just come out. But yeah, just wasn't really wowed. This is a very good YA mystery. I enjoyed the premise of both stories. I enjoyed the drama, but just I'm not going to read them again. That was already my second read of One of Us Is Lying. There wasn't going to be a third. Next up, we have Rainbow Grey by Laura Ellen Anderson. This is a middle grade story about people in the Weatherlands, and they have all these weather powers. They're really, really fun. I've had this a very long time. I'm glad I finally got round to it, but it's just not one I'm going to need to keep on my shelves. I think it might be a little bit too young for my goddaughter to read it. I think she might have outgrown this. I'm going to see if she wants it. If not, I'm going to pop it up on Vinted. But yeah, I have this lovely like sprayed edge edition. The illustrations are gorgeous. The story was cute. I'm not going to read it again. We then have the weirdest book I've read this year, and that is They Were Here Before Us by Eric LaRocca. This is a horror novella, and there is a man who has, let's say, relations with a chimp in it. Definitely not going to read this again. And last but not least on this list, we have Dating Dr. Dill by Nisha Sharma. This is a romance set with like the Indian dating scene, but in America. I didn't dislike it. I didn't like it. It was a very middle of the road meh book for me. It didn't have strong feelings. I'm not going to pick it up again. So there we have it. Those are all of the books that I unhauled in the past 2 months or so. Make sure you let me know if you like the sound of any of these, if you disagree with any of my opinions. But I had a good time cleansing myself of these books. I'm sure there'll be another unhaul video coming to you within the next couple of months as I slowly churn through my physical TBR and get rid of the books that I'm not going to read again. But for now, those are all of the books I have to show you. So thank you very much for watching this video. I really do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.